Meghan. Author and Professor of Journalism at the University of Southern California, Afua Hirsch, has been talking to us this morning as she believes Meghan has definitely been subject to racism from parts of the British press and the British establishment.
I think that ever since she first announced her relationship with Harry, ever since it was first made public, there has been a very racialised undertone, if not overtone, to a lot of the media narrative. And I actually don't think this is necessarily about the reaction of British people or even senior members of the royal family. I have no evidence to say that people in general feel hostile towards her or that members of the royal family have been racist towards her, maybe with one or two exceptions. I think that it's the tabloid press who have taken a particular tone with Meghan Markle and from the very beginning wanted to allude to the fact that she had African heritage and that this was something that really threatened continuity within the royal family. And then when they decided that they didn't like her, the constant attacking of her as a very visible minority, as the only person in my lifetime of African heritage to occupy that position in a senior level in the royal family, embodied so much of the sometimes subconscious racism, the othering, weaponizing ideas about crime and about her kind of having cast some kind of spell over Prince Harry, even the way that this is being discussed, that she's dragging him away from his family. When I hear that, I hear a history of black women being regarded as having these dark magic powers.
Well, let's bring our audience a couple of examples which you say show that some of the press treatment has been racist. The first, well, they're both from the Daily Mail. This is from November 2016. Harry's girl is almost straight out of Compton. Gang-scarred home of her mother revealed. So will he be dropping by for tea? Now, just explain the significance of that from your point of view.
Well, Meghan Markle grew up in Crenshaw in south central Los Angeles, which is an area known for multiple things. On the one hand, it is home to some of the famous gangs from Los Angeles, but on the other hand, it's home to one of America's best universities, one which I teach at. So this is a community that has a historic academic community. It also has an African-American community. It used to be a very middle-class African-American area, and in recent decades has also suffered from crime, like many inner-city areas all over the world.
So why would somebody pick out the gang side of it, bearing in mind she is non-white?
There is no suggestion that she personally has anything to do with gangs or any member of her family. This was simply the tabloid press alluding to the fact that she has, as someone of African-American heritage who's biracial, part of the same heritage as other people who happen to come from the same part of a city who are involved in gang violence.
And the film, obviously, Straight Outta Compton, is about gangs.
And I would really challenge any tabloid newspaper to find an example where they have taken a white person from South Central Los Angeles and described them in the same way. And it's this kind of gaslighting by running these very racialized stories and then denying that there's anything racist about them. It characterizes the tabloid press at the moment.
And also, as you said, she's from Crenshaw, not Compton. We've got another example. Again, it's from the Daily Mail. This was written by journalist Rachel Johnson about Meghan Markle. So I've done my due diligence on Miss Markle, and this is where I stand. Genetically, she's blessed. If there is an issue from her alleged union with Prince Harry, the Windsors will thicken their watery, thin blue blood and Spencer pale skin and ginger hair with some rich and exotic DNA. It's the use of the word exotic.
It is. I actually spoke to Rachel Johnson about this column when she wrote it, and this is actually not an example of something that was intended to be hostile. She was trying to say it's good to diversify the gene pool of the royal family, but it's just deeply uncomfortable in this country when we have such a recent history of categorising people as different species based on their race and their DNA. A very recent history of regarding Africans as savage and primitive based on their genetic inheritance, where we're still exoticized as black women constantly in the way that we're associated with music and sexuality. This is something that all little black girls in Britain have to deal with growing up.
And is that racist?
And it's inseparable from a history of racism. So as a black woman, I experienced that in a way that is very problematic. And it's very sad for me to see this biracial woman enter a previously uninhabited space of our country and our institutions by someone like her, and then be singled out by these kind of narratives and this kind of language. And that's why I think Prince Harry, who's not got a history of particular anti-racism, stood out and said, this is racist language and it's not acceptable, a completely unprecedented thing for a senior royal to do.
It is reported that Meghan was told a lot about what life would be like as a member of the royal family, not only inside the family, but the kind of scrutiny that you put put under. She said as much in that ITV documentary. Is that enough, that she was warned about what it would be like?
I don't think anyone could have told her what it would be like to be a biracial woman in the royal family, because there hasn't been one in modern times. And the thing about her, it's not just her heritage, it's the fact that she's owned her heritage. She's not sought to downplay it and said, oh, I don't see race, it's fine, just forget it, just pretend it's not there. She said, my mother's African-American and I'm proud of her heritage. Similarly, her feminism, which I think is also a big part of the hostility that she's experienced from the tabloid press. She hasn't kind of swept it under the carpet. She said, I'm a feminist and I want my activism to relate to who I am as a feminist. And I think it's that owning of her identity that is absolutely different from anything we've seen from senior royals before. And that's what was inspiring and refreshing to me. But I fear it's what has been threatening to parts of the British establishment.
When people point out that Diana, Kate, Camilla, Sarah Ferguson all had horrific press, obviously not with racist tones, as you're pointing out today, but all were subjected to horrible, horrible pieces in the British press. Is it any different for Meghan Markle?
Well, I do think that there is a wider issue about the abusive relationship we have with the royals. This idea that we don't want them to leave, clearly, as this debacle is showing, but we enjoy regularly abusing them very publicly. I think what Meghan Markle's experience has shown me is that when you put a woman of colour into that space, which has always been abusive, there are particular issues. She's more vulnerable because she's visibly different. She has a different heritage. We have so much baggage around race in this country that there's no way she can be abused in an unracialised way. I'm not saying that if the abuse were not racist, just regular abuse, that would be okay. In her case, I think she is bringing to the fore all of this denial, all of this baggage, and there's nothing that you can do to provoke a more defensive reaction in Britain than accuse something of being racist. And ironically, the very media organisations, the very commentators who have been using the most toxic language about Meghan Markle are now the ones taking most offence at the idea that there's anything racist about it.
You're talking about Piers Morgan in particular.
I mean, Piers Morgan is obsessed with Meghan Markle. He's obsessively written about this woman who hasn't deceived anyone, hasn't lied, hasn't cheated on anyone, hasn't broken any promises. There's no evidence that she has committed any crime. Yet the media seems to think it is appropriate to single out this woman, even when she were pregnant for the first time. There's no more position more vulnerable than being a new mother in the public domain and constantly attacking her. And in her case, I don't think we can separate that pattern of behaviour from the clearly racialised thinking that exists towards her, as we've just seen from the articles you singled out.
Thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you.